Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's working session of the Hudson School Board. We'll start with topics for discussion. We'll start with K-12 literacy presentation with Shannon.
All right, so as some members of my team, the teaching and learning team, come forward, I'll let them introduce themselves and what they're presenting tonight.
Okay, my name is Laura Minarchuk. I'm the Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, and here with me tonight is a group of our K-12 literacy leaders. And this is
Susie Anderson. I'm an instructional coach at the high school.
I'm Bethany Butson. Bethany Butson, instructional coach at the middle school. Anna Weiland, literacy specialist for the elementary schools.
And last time we shared about Act 20 and how that is in support to support our students who need more targeted reading support. Today we are going to be sharing about our K-12 Tier 1 curriculum. So it may seem obvious that our literacy instruction is directly correlated to our strategic plan in the areas of academic achievement and real-world learning. But I think especially in the dawn of AI, it's important to mention that these skills are so foundational, and we need to make sure that we're truly teaching these skills because AI has changed the game a little bit. And so we want to make sure that kids still have those skills where they're able to go out into the real world and be productive citizens. So this slide highlights how English language arts is foundational to all learning. Some students have said to us that, I don't really need to know how to read and write as critically as I used to because I can have AI summarize things for me. I can have AI write things for me. But what we're finding is exactly the opposite. With the dawn of AI, those strong standards-aligned literacy skills are essential for thinking critically, communicating clearly, and navigating an increasingly complex digital landscape. So AI is adding a layer of complexity to our literacy instruction, but is certainly not replacing anything. That is interesting.
I was gonna say, what if you click it though? Do they zoom in?
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, cool.
Something fun where they zoom in.
All right, so all students in grades K through 5 experience core literacy instruction through Amplify CKLA, and this program builds both foundational reading skills and also knowledge building in the areas of science, social studies, and literature. And throughout their elementary day, students are engaged in this instruction for a large portion of their day, ranging from 60 to 120 minutes, depending on which grade level they're at. So when they transition to the middle school, you'll see those next two arrows. We want to make sure that we're not reducing too quickly the level of literacy instruction that they're getting. That's why you'll see those two classes. Language arts uses into literature, and that has a reading comprehension focus. So students are being assessed on reading comprehension, language skills, and things like that. Whereas Language Arts B, students are being more assessed on those performance tasks such as reading, such as speaking engagements, and kind of more of those performance-based tasks. And then in 8th through 10th, sorry, Tim, you can go back. And then in 8th through 10th grade, students transition to that one core literacy course where they're doing into literature. And it's nice that they have that consistent flow, 6th through 10th grade, so that we have kind of established routines and procedures so that students can really dig into the core content and really go deep into that learning. And then in 11th and 12th grade, students choose their pathway based on their interest and what's best for them. We have 5 year-long courses that, if completed, students have the potential to earn college credit, so that's a really great option for our students. For students wanting a more nuanced approach or a more genre-specific, they have a menu of classes that they could choose that are semester-long courses, ranging from college composition to myths and legends, world literature, and one that's kind of exciting, the Whodunit course, that is a mystery and suspense focused course. So there's just something for everybody when they get into those electives.
So we're gonna take some time to dig through what this exactly looks like for each grade band. I'm gonna start with elementary. So K2, when they're doing reading, What this means is they're learning the basics, those foundational skills. They're learning how to decode, and they're learning the basic comprehension more related to oral language than even their reading comprehension. What this means is, like I said, phonics, fluency, retelling, all those basic things, and it's done through explicit teacher modeling and instruction. As they transition from that learning how to read, they learned what they are reading. So 3rd through 5th grade is where they start that strategic comprehension. This is where kids start to read more trade books. It's not as stuck in decodable, and it's not as controlled as the decodables they're seeing in K2. They're gonna see more high-end vocabulary. This is gonna really expand their vocabulary. It's gonna build their skills of fluency, their inferencing, and their text evidence. And you see the teacher really kind of start to take that role back. They still are explicitly instructing on new skills, but there's more guided practice and that scaffolding support to independence.
And then at the secondary level, you can see that the reading focus shifts to not only what does the text say or mean, but what is the purpose of the text. So there's more time spent analyzing the text and determining how the author creates meaning. Students engage in close reading activities and annotation, and they also synthesize multiple texts to create meaning.
So like I was saying, these are some examples of what you can see. So we're going to talk about those K2 ones you see right there on the left. Those are part of our CKLA skills 1 hour block. Kids work, like Laura said, some of our classes it's up to the 2 60-minute blocks. 60 minutes of that is true phonics and decoding. They're going to learn how to read with these decodable texts. You'll see on the very first one, Cat on Mom, that's a kindergarten text. Those are the first ones where they start with those CVC words and their short vowels. And then they start to build up to multi-lines to eventually where you can see in a first grade text, things that swim, multi-paragraphs. This is where you will see specific parts of words may be bolded. If they're working on, for example, the digraph SH, learning that says shh, the word fish might have the SH darkened or boldened so that kids know, oh, I'm learning this in class, I remember what that says. So again, very decodable. These ones that we get from CKLA are 100% decodable. Kids will not encounter a word that they are not either have been taught as a tricky word or a word that they cannot decode. So there is no guessing. Once we move to 3 through 5, that's where it becomes non-controlled text. And we're focused on really not how to read, but learning from reading. So you'll see here, these are more content-based. You'll see the examples we have up there. There's one from the Renaissance unit. There's also ones from the American Revolution. So these are going to be very high level vocabulary. The words are not single syllable, even just double syllable. You'll see a lot of triple or even 4 syllable words in there that they have to use their strategic skills that they've learned in K through 2 and start applying them to these texts, and they're going to gain a lot of knowledge. This is where they start to analyze the text, start to really think about what they're reading and how that applies to them, so that then they can take those and later on apply them to later grades.
Mr. President,
Yes.
the controlled and non-controlled, I think that's about the words being used in there, but it's not a terminology I'm familiar with. So if you could just explain that, I think that would be helpful.
So controlled just means the words that are being used are words that kids can decode, so they've learned. So actually the back of every one of our books, if I would have known, I would have brought one to show you. The back actually show exactly what patterns are in there. So for example, if kids haven't learned long vowels, you will not find a single long vowel in that text. It is very controlled with what is in there for the phonics patterns. Uncontrolled is considered like a trade book. So a typical book you pick off a library shelf, you don't know what you're gonna get. And I know as parents, like we go grab those books and we kind of say, oh, this looks about the right level-ish for my kid. And then you get to a word and you're like, oh, you're supposed to read the word, even just something with a silent letter in it. And you're like, okay, we haven't learned that yet. So you just tell them. We really wanna make sure that those first few years that they are focusing on the words so that they can apply that later. So that's the difference between controlled and uncontrolled.
Thank you so much.
All right, and then here is an example from a 9th grade unit. The unit is titled Love and Loss. And so in this unit, students would be reading Romeo and Juliet. They would probably be picking parts and acting it out since it's a drama and it's meant to be performed. But also with that, they would be reading 2 literary analysis arguments. On the left side of the screen is kind of a description of the 2 literary analyses that they would read. On the right side, on the top, would be an example from a student workbook. And in there, you can also see, like on the left column, it's actually some directions of what the students are supposed to be doing as they're reading it. And so it's telling them to annotate words or phrases that give clues to the author's claim about Romeo and Juliet, and also asking students to summarize the author's position. And then in the bottom right, that is the analyze the text section. In this section, students are asked to answer high-level critical thinking questions, and you can see the skills that they're being asked to do. It's the first word there. So they're being asked to synthesize, compare, analyze, and evaluate. And so when they're working through these questions, that can look different ways. It could be students working as a group to answer one or more questions and then sharing them out with the class, moving around the room and answering questions on large posters or at different stations, or completing the answers individually and then partnering up with another student for collaboration.
So much of our direct instruction is focused on nonfiction articles, short stories, poetry, and excerpts from longer texts. And this is done really intentionally throughout the resource for a few reasons. First, the science of learning has shown us the importance of a wide knowledge base to build that background knowledge so that students have some context for reading comprehension as a whole. Through these shorter excerpts, there's offered a great opportunity to acquire that domain-specific vocabulary and knowledge that can help students go deeper as they become more competent readers. It also allows us to have students synthesize a lot of information about different texts and how those pieces of works work together to show us something unique about the world that we live in. And one other benefit of having shorter works is if a student isn't super engaged in the work, we can teach close reading skills, teach how to persevere through that, and then move on to something that maybe they would have more interest in. The works are pretty high interest, but it's very hard to please every single teenager, specifically in the room that you're in. And so kind of giving those short excerpts gives kind of kids a flavor and also asks them to engage deeply. That being said though, we do know that there's a lot of value in long reads. So in grades 6 through 10, in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they read The Giver in 6th grade, Brown Girl Dreaming in 7th, and then they read The Outsiders in 8th grade. And then through 9th through 11th grade, students have the option of one of 2 novels to read at each grade level. And then Romeo and Juliet is a core text that all 9th graders engage with. It's it's not a novel, but it is a Shakespearean play, and it gives some stamina there. These works are used with instructional purpose. They're asked to apply their skills and their stamina and background knowledge through thematic ways that they're learning throughout the units.
So next, we're going to talk about the other side of the ELA block is really the writing. We know that it works cohesively with the reading. We're going to talk about what that looks like for each grade band as well. So K2, the greatest time to see writers because you see so much growth and it's just so fun to see. It's the early emergent writers. They are just doing, simple drawings they start with. We have our kindergartners, truly, they are just now at this point that you're starting to write sentences. Before that, it was really working with their drawings, trying to express themselves through drawing something and then using their oral language to tell what the story was. They move through this drawing to then dictation where, a teacher might tell them, write this, we take it word by word, and then eventually into early sentences, which is where, like I said, most of our kindergartners are right now. We do all 3 genres when writing, even starting in kindergarten. So they write narratives, they write their opinion writings, then they write informative and explanations. They also start at the beginning conventions. So we expect capital letters and periods and spaces right away at the beginning. We teach them, just like reading, they're the foundation of writing. We want to make sure that they have them. And then we want to always make sure they're aware of their audience as well. So just who are they writing for, their teacher or their classmates? It is really that idea of quality over quantity is a big thing that we are focused on with K2. I know a lot of times kids, especially I'm working with the first grade group right now, and when we write, those kids that write a page and a half come up to you and they're so proud of it. And there are times that you're like, yep, but you said the same thing over and over again. I had a kid today write about a habitat, and he was like, oh, the desert is hot. It is really, really hot. It is so hot there. It gets hot when the sun comes out. And I'm like, great. Guess what? He had a page and a half. He thought his was the best. I had another girl, though, write, predators hide in the bushes for their prey in the desert. I'm like, one sentence, bam, girl had it. So we're really working on that quality versus quantity at that K2 writing because we hope that then that builds when they start making more quantity. 3 through 5, they start developing more of a structure and purpose. So again, using those 3 different types of writing, they're still doing all of that, but they're starting to have more of the intro, the body, the conclusion in paragraph form versus one paragraph. They're also starting to bring in text evidence to support whether it's their opinion or whether it's to support the facts that they're giving. They go through that editing process as well as revising, and they collaborate with their peers, and then they start to synthesize, which we know will prepare them for the upper grades. Throughout all of this, we are still doing explicit teaching for this. We're modeling, we're showing them exemplars. Like I said today, even just taking those ones I did in the first grade room, we put them on the doc cam. Like, what do we notice about this one in first grade that's really strong, hoping that then they bring that back to their own revising and editing. But really, again, the big focus in the elementary world is that quality right now over the quantity. We don't ask for a certain number of sentences. We really look at the standard as in, are they able to accomplish that standard? Yes or no? The number of sentences is just dependent on how they do that.
And then at the secondary level, writing emphasizes independence, depth, and complexity. Students engage with increasingly complex texts and apply higher level writing skills, including analyzing themes, evaluating ideas, synthesizing across multiple texts, and constructing well-supported evidence-based arguments.
Mr. President.
Megan?
So how long of papers are students asked to write in high school? I mean, I'm sure it differs by class, but I was just wondering if there's.
Yeah, so it depends on the prompt that they're given, but we're going to speak a little bit about the Romeo and Juliet analysis, and that Susie could probably speak more on the length of that one.
I don't know if they're necessarily assigned a length that it has to be, but an essay that would have an introduction, a body, a conclusion. Sometimes they might tell them how many main points that they need to address, or how many different
Evidence they would need.
or how many different resources they need to bring in. So I don't know if we have like set, like it has to be 2 pages or 4 pages.
But like
a full essay.
multi-paragraph.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I wasn't thinking there was a right or wrong answer to that. I was just
curious.
wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So here's some prompts. Like Bethany mentioned, we do a lot of prompt writing. That's what's expected on them on the forward assessment. So we also know that's really the type of writing you do. I think in the past we did a lot of narrative because kids like to write narratives, but when we think about as adults, like how many narratives do you really ever write in your life? There's not a lot. You typically are either taking notes when you're doing something, or you're prompt writing, you're responding to something. So we are really making that shift even in the early grades of having that prompt writing. So we've kind of given you some samples. So you can see right here, I've put a couple pictures as well. So for example, right now, kindergarten's prompt that they had this last unit, they were learning about cows and sheep and chickens. The prompt was students will write, draw, and verbalize an opinion about which farm animal would be the easiest to take care of. And so kids wrote different ones. My favorite was, of course, that kids wanted a pig because it didn't need a bathtub. That was the one I heard multiple times. So by second grade, then they are starting to collect, synthesize, and record information about insects. I think that's really important to see that word synthesize in second grade. I know a lot of the times even when we say that to the teachers, they're like, it's a lot, but the kids can do it. And so their prompt was to develop an opinion piece, again, so we've got that opinion, about which insect would make the best neighbor and give at least 2 reasons to support that opinion. So I think that's like Susie was saying, you might not necessarily get a full page. Some kids might have a paragraph. The big thing we're looking for is, do they have 2 very valid reasons to support their opinion? And then by 4th grade, students use extensive notes and paraphrase to gather information, and then use information to form their opinion. So purposely picked all opinion ones so you can kind of see that progression. Their prompt would be, write an opinion about what type of person you would most want to be if you were living in the Middle Ages. And so again, that might be a multi-paragraph one with multiple reasons and evidence to support that. This is really where they're starting to bring their notes and paraphrase what they've read versus just their opinion. This is again where they take their reading, figure out how does it apply to themselves.
Yep, and then that shift to 9th grade, speaking to the unit on love and loss, 2 students write a literary analysis explaining how the themes and ideas in Romeo and Juliet remain relevant today. This prompt adds rigor by shifting students from their personal opinion to deep literary analysis. Students, once again, are working with complex texts, synthesizing ideas from multiple sources, and then using that text evidence to support analytical claims.
Sorry. Okay, so another part that often I think gets forgotten about the literary side is the speaking and listening. Really, that oral language is a big piece of literacy. And that is our focus for K2. So that foundation of oral language. We know how important it is for parents to be talking to their kids at home and having those conversations, and we know we can't replicate that, but we can definitely enhance that. So we do that a lot through turn and talks with partner sharing. We'll do choral or echo reading, a lot of storytelling, and just asking and answering questions through morning meeting or more formal ways through the curriculum. This allows them to build their vocabulary as well as analyze and start to expand their sentence structure so that they are moving from that simple sentences to more the complex one. This is really seen a lot by teachers modeling that scaffolding and really just continuing to encourage participation in that oral rehearsal. So we see a lot of that in K2. Once we've really established that foundation of oral language, we start to build in that 3 through 5 structured academic discussion. So this is where there's more accountable talk, use of text evidence. We'll see small groups, partners, book clubs, different ones having discussions, and this is where we really make sure that they are on topic, that they're using key vocabulary, restating questions. K through 5, just in general, anytime a kid answers a question with our curriculum, we do expect full sentences in response, and if a kid were to answer with a one word, we always say, oh, let's try that in a full sentence, or we will model it and have them repeat it back, because we know how valid that, or how important that is and how much that can really expand them in their daily language. We also will see kids have oral summaries, and they really work on having questioning and comparing notes or ideas and clarifying if they are confused on something. So again, we do this through modeling with our teachers, we scaffold a ton, and we really just give kids the why on why we do this, because I think, you know, kids, like Laura's saying, especially those 3rd through 5th grades, the minute you say right or answer in a full sentence, they're gonna be like, but why? So we do tell them the why, or we model that, or when we have conversations, we also do that, just so that it doesn't feel like we're just doing it to make you have to do it. There is a reason behind it.
And then for speaking and listening at the secondary level, students engage in a lot of collaborative discussions, debates, Socratic seminars, also lit circles where they're focusing on sharing their ideas and backing them up with evidence, and they also engage in active listening.
All right, then just some overall highlights of our language arts curriculum K-12. They provide instructional supports for teachers, so there's structured lessons to develop complex reading and writing skills for all students. Equity and access, so we've got access to diverse text scaffolds to ensure that all students can engage with grade level content. And then assessment and feedback, so there's formative checks planned throughout each lesson, unit assessments, and then data reports that guide instruction.
And then we always like to just throw in a little data because we love to look at that. But how is it working? On the left-hand side, you'll see some longitudinal data, so that follows cohort. So for example, that first line beneath the gray bar looks at our current first graders, but it looks at where they started as kindergartners in the winter. So you can see, I think that says 48.9% of our students were low risk as kindergartners last year in the winter. And that same cohort of kids this year as first graders are at up to 73.2. We're really testing my vision here. Something like that. But what is exciting about that, you can see very clearly on the far right-hand side is the amount of growth that we've seen so far with our new resource. And I think a really important point of emphasis is that bottom line from 5th to 6th grade. In the past, we often saw a little bit of a dip when they went to the middle school, but this is one of the first years that we've seen that increase of 6.9% of more students are proficient in 6th grade than they were in 5th grade, which is a huge celebration, and I think speaks to the really hard work that our teachers are doing and that our students are doing. And then on the right-hand side, this is an incomplete data set because our 7th and 8th graders are taking the growth measure this week and next week. But you can see this is so 6th graders at the beginning of the year is the top bar, and then 6th graders middle of the year is the bottom bar. And so we can see just within the half of year that we're moving kids on the different side of that target line, which is definitely the goal. And so we're really, really proud of the work that our teachers are doing. We're proud of how hard our students are working. And it's really paying off. So I just wanted to give you a glimpse into that data and know that you'll get more of this as the data becomes more complete.
Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. That was really good. I loved the data points. Quick question on FastBridge has a reading, and I think there's another reading. that
Auto
says
reading.
Auto reading.
Yes.
Can you just, as a mom getting those, I always,
But-
Can you define those?
Yes, A reading is more like the broad comprehension. And so like it'll have vocabulary and context questions and things like that, whereas auto reading is testing students' automaticity with reading. So it's timed, it's quick. A reading, they have as much time as they want or need. A reading, it moves them through the questions very quickly so that we can see how automatic is it for students, because what we know, the more automatic it is, the more cognitive load they can carry for comprehension. And so that's kind of gives us an idea. If students are struggling, where does our focus need to be? Does it need to be with the phonics and decoding, or do we need to work on some comprehension skills?
Great. And are we tracking the
Yes, we are, and I can
Okay.
I can provide that data as well.
That'd be
That's looking
great. Would
really,
love to
really
see
great.
that.
Yeah, for sure.
The thing that overall I love the direction that it's going, and I realize reading is a tough one, especially in the digital age that we are in. Everything is getting shorter and shorter and more audio form and snippets, and our attention span is going down. And that, I applaud you guys. That is a hard hill to continue to climb and get kids interested in reading. And so you can see the creativity that goes into these curriculums to try and really build foundational skill sets and grow that across the grade levels. My question, and I guess slight concern, is books. I feel like, and this is not just us, but just very broadly as community, as a society, we have pulled back on deep reading, on the love of books. And when I think of kind of like when we were going through schools, some of the things that the books that we learned were introduced to us by our teachers who had a deep love of reading and said, this might not be something you typically pick up, but we're gonna read it as a class and we're gonna walk through this. This is a dense one. We're gonna tackle it together. And I don't know how we start to do more of that or if there's an opportunity for that, but I do see it even in my own kids' trajectory through the district. It started out strong in elementary, and then the books and the reading of books within the structured classroom setting has shifted more towards just the individual small snippets or trying to figure out and analyze. And I realize we're trying to teach skill sets, and it's a balance, and there's no magic anything, but just a reflection from what I see.
Yeah, and I think part of that, like, we are in year 2 of our curriculum implementation as well. And so that means that we're in the implement and refine and reflect. And so as we start doing that, we're constantly having conversations about, like, do we need to do things that will add something else into the curriculum that we're missing? And so I appreciate that point, because it is something that's so important in building that stamina and that love for books. And like you said, it is a balancing act, because we can see if we go too far with, like, we're doing novels, there's a lot of kids who can hide behind that and not really dig deep into it. And so it is that balance, and we will be having conversations about how is this working, what else might we need, and things like that. So I do appreciate that concern, because it's something that we think about. It's something that our teachers think about, and this is really, we've done a lot of research on high quality instructional materials and how foundational it is to really, we've seen as a country a dip in reading proficiency, and so how do we respond to that? And really looking at that high quality instructional resources that we have adopted and the research behind that, and so that's what we're trying to balance right now. And it's, like you said, it is challenging, but we are in those reflection stages as well, where we're starting to have some of those conversations.
I will say as well, too, like, we still do Battle of the Books, which also encourages a lot of kids to read. With our elementary program being so knowledge-based, one thing I can speak for as a parent, like, kids are so excited about the different topics that then they are asking the media specialist for topics. Like, I can say my second grader read about read about ancient Greece, which I would have never pictured a second grader loving. Like, this year for Christmas, he got a chapter book about the Greek gods, and like every night he's sitting on he's like, Mom, today, and I'm trying to pronounce these names, and he knows them like left to right. But I've noticed that too, the librarians have said, like, oh, we need to expand our collection because we have kids asking for things about this. So that's the other thing. We've been really working hard partnering with our media specialists at the elementary level of saying, this grade is working on this. Can you lay out those books for them? And really just figuring out how to get them to, again, like you said, fall in love with that knowledge piece, not just the reading, because I think, like Laura said, I have 2 other kids that very much hide behind books, and you tell them to read a book and they open one up and they make it look like they're reading, but they have no interest at all to actually get that information, where I feel like now that he, at least my son, has this, he's starting these little dipsticks of, ooh, learn about this. Like today he came home, he like, yeah, we learned about enslaved people today with Abraham Lincoln. I want to learn more about that. I'm going to go watch Brain Pot. Like, it was very much like wanting to learn more. So I think that's the other thing of it, that we sometimes assume like the love of reading has to come from a very fictional like story that we grew up with. And I think kids are finding other ways around that too, to still find that way around books. It's just giving them to them.
Kate?
As you're sitting here, I'm watching you guys and you're so excited about reading. And I honestly had a flashback to when I was a kid and how my teachers talked about reading. And that I Love to Read Month is coming up. And that was such an exciting month for me as a kid, which is really, you just brought all that back. So thank you. That's so exciting. It's so fun to have you teaching our kids. Thank you.
Aaron?
As you're talking here, I'm just, you're talking about these older books and these older things that these kids really like to see. And I get a little concerned thinking, maybe kind of on the same line as Maria, about the books and the content in the books. And I can't help think, like, as kids come across like an old letter in a book, can they even read it? Are we teaching cursive on any level that they would be able to comprehend that, even style of writing? And so I'm just wondering if there's room in here to even talk about potentially putting cursive writing back into the curriculum somewhere.
It's a great question. I
kind
will
of a
say,
life
some
skill.
teachers right now, it's very much like teacher dependent. We do have part of our curriculum has like a supplemental part where teachers will use it as like morning work for those kids that want to. Because we also know some kids that struggle with handwriting. Cursive is also just a really good way for them to get their ideas across and more fluently than printing. But it's not explicitly right now said to be taught anywhere specifically. A lot of like the older letters, for example, I know I've seen they're more of like a italicized font. They aren't usually typically written in the way that they see them, which would be cursive. Because yeah, I think they do make them more challenging to read, but they're not in full cursive. Yeah.
And reminder too, like we're very new in the curriculum and it's vast, the amount of resources that teachers have to pull from. And so right now we kind of have this foundational list, like this is what we need to do is set our priorities. But as we move through the curriculum improvement process, like I said before, there is that space for reflect and refine. And so as things come up or if it needs to be addressed, like there is space in the process to do that.
I think it's great how enthusiastic you all are about reading, and thank you very much for being that way, because that's what it takes to be good readers later on. I feel like you have to have the good teacher to do it, and you guys all seem like you're doing a fantastic job, so thank you very much for your work in that.
Yeah, you'll never hear us tire about hearing tests or people improving their skills going from 5th grade to 6th grade. So no matter the topic, believe me, we key in on that, and that's why Megan was applauding. But can't say enough about that. So great job on that. And I love the part about the expressing through ideas in the K to 2. You see the words coming in and the sentence structure coming in. And I could spend hours in the hallways of our elementaries just looking. So I've heard that some people say we don't have the tack strips we used to have with the remodeled schools. I'm all in favor of more tack strips, and Nick can fight me on that. But because that is just amazing to go through. I remember even when my kids were young and they'd be picking them up from school and they'd let's go, and I'm like I want to hit the 1st grade hallway, So, but thank you for the presentation. Awesome job. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Moving next to Market and Johnson action item.
Yeah, this is just a pay application that came in a little bit late, didn't make the regular January meeting, so this is, Bonnie has signed off on this. They verified that we have all the receipts, everything's been signed off, so we just need a motion as written in the document there.
Mr. President,
Brian?
I'd like to make a motion that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $230,402.84.
Thank you, Brian. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Maria. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Moving next to personal hires, changes, and Andrea.
So this time of year, we start having repeated during both work sessions as well as regular board meetings, the personnel packs. So consistent with that from prior years, we have a recommendation to move forward with this personnel pack, please.
Motion, do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. President, I make a motion to move forward with the personnel pack as presented today on January 26, 2026.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Megan. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. Moving next to the monthly budget update with Dave. And welcome, Dave.
Thank you. My name is Dave Gerberding. I'm Assistant Director of Finance. And I'll walk through the budget update with you. This is through December, the second quarter of the fiscal year. This is in the same format as every month. You can see we start with the funds. The second page has that in graphical form for the general fund. And then the expenditures by major object, which are also on the next page. After that, it's broken into more detail. And there's also revenues by fund and in detail for Fund 10. The last page, the general fund expense variances. This is in essentially the same format as in prior meetings. I looked at this, the convention with the asterisks is a little confusing. I know I tried to explain a little bit more. At the bottom, you can see the little notes with the asterisks and one for each column because sometimes they're different. It's not consistent between the percentage and the dollar value. So I put a little blurb there underneath the construction 2 items and then the asterisks explanation. But generally, most of these still have some ongoing variance. There's 3 new ones, gas for heat, instructional payment to private vendors, and district dues and fees. A lot of these do fluctuate based on timing from year to year. Some of these will remain though. Going forward, I would expect, for instance, the dues and fees, the bottom one in the first section, the 941 dues and fees, that there was a significantly higher fee associated with the sale of the district office property. And so that's where that's coded. That's why that's causing that to show up in the variance report. And then the 2 below, largely related, the variance is largely related to construction. So again, similar format. I expanded it a little bit just to try to make it more clear for people what they're seeing. And that's through December. I would say if you look at page 3, the expenses by major object for Fund 10, you can see the biggest budgets, salaries and fringe, for instance, those are very consistent percentage-wise. It's right after the charts, Tim. So those top couple, those big budget areas, very consistent year over year. I think as you look at the budget in general, I would say we're on pace. The construction side is kind of the big variance from prior years. So, any questions?
Mr. President.
Yes, Kate.
Have we seen a lot of changes with snow removal or heat? Any big changes from last year to this year?
I think we're still, I don't know that we've received all the invoices for snow removal to date. The heating, as I looked at it in advance of the meeting, it looks like there's also some invoice timing, but also usage is up a bit, I would say.
Thank you.
No other questions? Okay, thank you, Dave.
You're welcome.
Moving on to the overnight travel proposal. Shannon.
Yep. So what you're seeing here, I brought this to you in December to approve our fall and winter overnight. If you look at the graph, the blue is what we're looking for spring for approval at the next meeting. And just a reminder, we ask for the overnight tracking approval for those activities and or athletics that could be multiple day events. They might have early check-ins, or they might just have same day travel be unrealistic for these activities. So this is just your first look. And again, you'll be looking at the blue for approval for what we're going to be looking at for the spring.
Kate.
I am wondering, I know we've talked as a board about overnight travel and wanting to have 2 staff members there. Is that something that is a consistent policy, that we have 2 staff as opposed to 1 going down with a group of students?
Yes, we have more than 1. And in everything that I've looked at from the past, we also have multiple chaperones too.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Yep.
There are no other questions? Moving to school age care with Tracy.
Yeah, I have one that's a separate, I mean, it's overnight travel, but it's also
Oh, I'm
one
sorry.
that, no, it's okay. I want to just propose this for you to look at. It's international travel, so we need to have you have eyes on this a year before the trip. So this is a proposal for choir, 11th and 12th graders, for March of 2027. So I'll just give you maybe just a couple of highlights, just the connection to the strategic plan, the vision, that the Hudson School District empowers all students to cultivate their talents, embrace their passions, and leverage their learning to impact the world around them. Highlights for this trip include 8 days, 2 travel days, and then 6 learning days and performing days. They will be performing, if approved, at 2 venues that have historical and cultural importance. They would also participate in a workshop day with the Irish Institute of Music and Song. And then they will also have other educational and cultural experiences in Ireland. And then one thing that I thought was kind of neat, they would have a homecoming performance as well. So it will kind of encompass 3 or 4 performances in kind of a short time, as well as their learning over there too.
Mr. President,
Megan?
this looks like an awesome trip, and I couldn't help but notice they'll be there for St. Patty's Day.
Oh,
So, you know, how exciting.
Yes.
This
Extra
looks
culture.
like a great opportunity for students to travel around Ireland.
And everything that I've learned about the trips that they've done in the past have been really, you know, kind of life-changing for the students and really good experiences for the chaperones too.
Yeah, like previous years, you'll keep us informed on issues with travel concerns and insurance, and
Yes.
so our parents don't get put in a spot. I know we've learned some lessons years ago, so that's been pretty smooth the last few years, I believe, but just feel like you have to say it.
Yes, will do.
Okay,
Does the choir do it consistently? Is it every other year?
You know, I'm not sure, maybe Nick knows that, but I think with 11th and 12th
Every
graders.
3rd year.
Okay, it's 3 years, okay.
Shannon, I'm just curious, what's the dollar amount, like, or percentage that gets covered? I'm reading in here that there's plans for fundraising.
Yes.
Like, so if it says the trip is, let's just say, $3,500 a student, like, does most of that, do you think, get covered, or maybe
No.
half?
Well, I asked that, and historically, it's been about $500 per, yeah,
Is what it goes towards?
per
Okay.
student. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
if nothing else, thank you, Shannon.
Yep, thank you.
Now, with Tracy with the school age care fees.
Sure. It's that time of the year to look at the 2026-2027 school year and set our school age care fees for this coming summer and then into next year. And the reason we come so early to the board is because we want this information in place as we start registration for 4K kindergarten, and then we start summer registration in March as well. So the information here, over the past several years, we've been slowly increasing the cost, trying to look at what are the comparables in the community and also what's comparable to other school age care programs. So we look at all of that information. And we're fairly consistent as far as a little bit higher than most of our school counterparts in the area, slightly lower in some cases to our community partners. but not all situations. So we're right in the ballpark where we should be, and trying to continue to increase to cover our costs, because we're Fund 80, so we expect to break even on school-age care, but also not to increase the fee to a point where our families can't afford it. And as is noted here, families who qualify for free or reduced meals do get a reduced rate. And we also, looking at data, we have very few families who need to be put on like a payment plan. So if I'm a family that doesn't qualify for free and reduced, and I'm still having a hard time making ends meet, we do work with all families to make sure that they can continue to participate. And this is just for your information, and then we'll bring it back to the board in February for actual action on it.
Megan?
Mr. President, I think you've done a great job of keeping the costs increases minimal, Tracy. And I, as a parent who uses after-school care and a kindergartner who's just so pumped to do summer age care this year, that does not want to go to Camp St. Croix but wants to do it through the school instead. It's just a great program. You have great staff. Is it breaking even right now? How's it looking generally?
So we're on track to break even, and school age care typically does. It's, when you look at Fund 80, it's community ed that is probably your expenses that don't always meet revenue. So that's why we do the levy within community, or within Fund 80. That's part of it. But school age care usually does fine. We had a couple of years just primarily during COVID, when we continued to pay staff, and because we don't have revenue unless we have people using the service, that put us in a hole. But we dug out of that hole fairly quickly in Fund 80. And we also have put a greater emphasis over, certainly the last year, and starting with summer, moving away from supplies and materials. Not that we don't, we still have plenty of supplies and materials, but choosing to put that into staffing and making sure that our child to staff ratios are kept in a good area.
Mr. President,
Kate?
can you explain to me, like what session rate is, or how many hours for K before and after?
Sure.
is?
So what a session rate means is, as a parent, I can choose to use the morning session, and that's, so we open at 6 a.m. and we go until 6 p.m. So in the morning, that session would start at 6 a.m. and go to the start of the school day. As a family, I may start at 7, I may start at 8 o'clock. It's all the same. Okay. So we're not doing an hourly rate for any of these. And so the reason the, the wrap care session rate, that $550 is lower, it's because they're also using the full day care. So if I'm in wrap care and I'm paying the full day rate, so we just give those families an additional reduced rate if they're having to use morning or the afternoon before and after school care.
Okay.
Just again, to keep costs reasonable for families.
Thank you.
And the hourly rate, that kind of thing went away a long time ago, didn't there?
We haven't had an hourly rate for a long, long time. And then in the summer, what we do is there is that reduced rate if you're scheduling for the whole summer, so that 40 plus days versus like a drop-in rate. And the drop-in rates, the reason we have drop-in rates as high as we do, we encourage families to choose days so that, we can schedule staff accordingly. So it's hard when we have drop-ins to make sure that we have the correct staff for the number of kids that are on site.
No other questions? Thank you, Tracy. Next up is disposition of Holton and Willow River Elementary buildings. Nick?
Yep, so, You guys have not talked about this. We haven't had any discussion about it since, I believe it was November meeting, maybe? That's when you guys talked about last. I have people reaching out to me, realtors that are reaching out to me. I need to know what you would like me to do. Oh, sorry. Start over. We have not talked about this since the November meeting. But I am now, because you guys made the decision to close the two buildings, I'm having people reach out to me with interest in the buildings, whether they want to tour them, put in offers on them, or what the process is. You know, as of right now, I said the board has not made any decisions on what the disposition of the buildings are gonna be, but I need to know, I need some level of direction from the board as to how you would like me to handle these inquiries moving forward. Because as of right now, I've just said, I've not been given any direction at this point, so that we don't currently have any buildings for sale. So, did have, anticipating that one realtor said they were planning on sending an offer in, an unsolicited offer in for one of the buildings, and I said, well, you can send it in, but I don't have any direction to do anything with it. So I thought, add it to the agenda to say, is there any discussion you'd like to have? What would you like me to do? So I guess I would open it up.
Okay,
Mr.
open it.
President?
Aaron?
I believe last we kind of left off, we did talk about this briefly after November, and we talked about whether Willow was actually labeled as a historic site or not, and I believe it was, yes, well, it's labeled, it's not actually a landmark registry. And we didn't, is that confirmed?
Could not find it listed on any of the state registries.
Okay, so all options are on the table then with
Yep.
that building? Okay.
Yep.
So there's no restrictions and, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there were no restrictions, that we actually did figure that one out.
Okay, no one else was reaching, I thought? No. So something I was thinking about, if that's the case, if you're having unsolicited offers, I mean, obviously, we need to do everything above board, and, if we get an offer, the question is, should we look at the offer? Do we then have to put it out for bids? Do we, have we talked to legal counsel on that, just for moving forward? Like I said, I think our focus as a board right now is the transition of, moving forward with root boundary districts. But if we do have unsolicited offers coming through, we should have a plan. So,
Mr. President?
Megan?
I agree. I mean, it took a long time to sell the district office, and UU has been
Ongoing.
for sale and in process for a while. If I would hate for us to miss an opportunity to sell the buildings for a good price, which will benefit our taxpayers if we don't move at the right time. So, that's my comment at this moment. Kind of petered out at the end there.
Kate?
I agree with Megan, but I'm wondering how we move forward with that in a way that is safe for our kids that are there, and if we need to consult with our attorney on how that process works.
Yeah, so I can, it was on the November 10th meeting, this was the last time we talked about this as a board. You talked about it, Brian Zeller came and talked to the board about the different options you could go through, whether it be listing the building with a listing agent, whether it be doing sealed bids on buildings, what exactly you wanted to do. And then you did go into closed session to talk about valuations, which is totally within the realm of what the buildings may be worth in his professional opinion. And so now we're kind of at that point where what I will have to do if we got an unsolicited offer, which there's a real estate person telling me there's one coming. I have to find out from our attorney, what do I even do with that? Because the one thing you have to make sure that you do related to buildings is that everybody has an opportunity to buy the public property, and the board will have to take official action for the sale of the public property. So I just need to know, do you want me to start looking at potentially listing these buildings? Do you want me to wait and see, get feedback from our attorney first?
Brian?
Thanks, Mr. President. Nick, to that question, one, I agree with Megan and Kate that I think we should kind of start the process. I think both. I think probably talk to the attorney and come back with what do our options look like for listing the buildings. Kate talked about making sure it's a safe process and it's open to the community, that they're aware of where we are, but I think we don't want to miss out on a potential buyer that can benefit our taxpayers. That doesn't mean it'll happen fast, but I think there's no reason to not get started.
Mr. President, I would support, similar to Kate, Brian, Megan, moving forward. I think dual path it, have a conversation with the attorneys, figure out what happens if you get an unsolicited bid, and start the process for listing and see what happens given the trajectory that happened with the district office, where we still are with the UU property. I think it's okay to keep moving forward, and where we are in the transition point, we're potentially moving to a point where it is completely within the administration's, figuring out the staffing and stuff. So I think the transition point is okay to start opening that focus.
Mr. President?
Megan?
One comment and a question. In terms of like sealed bid or non-sealed bid, I lean towards non-sealed bids, if I understand these concepts fully. I mean, I think it seems like it would be better if the community was able to see what the bids are, but I don't know if that puts us at a disadvantage in terms of selling the property. So anyway, I don't have a strong feeling about it yet.
Yeah, so a sealed bid, what it is you would set a date. You would say January 26th by 5 p.m., any and all bids are due to purchase this property. And the sealed part is just, nobody gets to know how anybody else bid, and they're all open publicly, and everybody gets to see what the bids are.
Okay.
But it's just, you open them up and it goes to the highest bidder unless you have a reserve that's put into place. That's one option. The other option is what we've done with, so we did that somewhat with UU. We said, give us proposals, and then said to the board, here are different proposals, which ones do you want to entertain? With the district office, we listed with the broker, because it was more of a building type of thing versus something that everybody can get the information purely online. I think the other piece that's important is, as we start to, if offers come in, and I don't know if they will, but within like a week of you guys making a decision on the building, and that was part of the reason why I brought it up back in November, was people are already starting to reach out, what's your long-term plan? And at that time in November, the board said, we're not going to, we're going to push this off a little bit. But now people are knocking on the door again, wanting to know what's your plan. And so that's why I bring it up again. So I guess what I'm getting from you guys is marching orders to be, I will talk to our attorney, and so I make sure that we are following kind of all the letter of the law as it relates to the property, find out exactly what the board needs to take action on and how that works. Competitively, you're able to go into closed session to talk about pricing, to talk about, anything that's going to be in the bargaining piece of it. But very much in the open session is the conversation about the sale of the property, moving forward with the sale of the property and things along those lines. That all has to be done in an open meeting. And then I can also get, if you want, I can get pricing related to brokers. Brian talked about it at the November 10th meeting. They can be for sale by owner, I guess. We would need somebody to walk us through what the value of these buildings are. That's not something we do. But I mean, obviously our attorneys can handle, contracts and everything along those lines, but, as far as at least when you use a broker, and this was like at the district office, they kind of handle everything. I guess Tim had to, do some tours on occasion, but, they kind of have their own, they handle it on their own.
I
So-
think the UU property, we listed it numerous times over the years before I was here and didn't get much in it. Was the make a proposal kind of option is what got some movement on
Yes.
it. So, and again, that's buildable land versus an actual building, but certainly more similar in that it's not an office building like the district office was. That's very tight and as far as use.
Well,
So,
one other thing, mentioning the broker versus not, one of my questions is how much time would this take of yours, Bonnie's, other district leadership while we're working on the transition? Because I think it's important that this doesn't detract from your ability and others on the leadership team from working on that. So it sounds like a broker is the way to go in
And
that way
it's-
then?
I mean, they're the ones that do this for a living.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a reason that, most people don't sell their house by owner. Most people use realtors and stuff like that. If we go with the broker, it's not a time suck for us. I mean, there's a little bit of time, involved with it, but it's not a huge amount of time. It's just really waiting, as they walk people through. We would put parameters, if we did end up going with the broker, when you could walk people through, it'd be outside of school hours, outside of school time, things along those lines. Because obviously somebody would want to see the inside of the facility if they're looking at wanting to make an offer on it. That's why I was a little shocked when the latest, call came in that there may be an unsolicited offer coming in. I'm thinking, we haven't shown the building to anybody, so unless they've been in there on their own, yeah.
I think it'd be helpful to get some pricing on brokers and get that structure and what that process looks like. My sense, I agree with Megan. I think making sure your time and other administrators can remain focused on what this transition looks like so that it's a smooth and good transition as we lead into the 26-27 school year. And also, frankly, reserving the right to push the pause button if we need to, if it just if the prevailing headwinds come about and say, nope, it wasn't as good of a time as we thought, we could press the pause button if we needed to at any time.
Absolutely.
and first, and then Aaron, sorry.
Just one thought, not necessarily for this point in the process, but something that came to mind, back in November, we talked a lot about making sure that the communities that have gone to school and worked in those buildings had an opportunity to properly, close them out and celebrate them, and just making sure with the timing, and not that we would, close the day after school ends, but making sure there's time for the garden club at Holton and moving the bell, and we talked about playgrounds and all of those things, just not
Tracy-
rush a closing date.
Tracy can probably speak to that. She's working on that as part of the transition.
Yes, I've been meeting with the elementary principals, and the elementary principals have been meeting with parent groups, so starting to put together a plan. There will be a community celebration at both of the buildings, May 31st. Time and all of that, and all of what's going to take place is to be determined. We're also working with, like you had mentioned, the Holton Garden Club, to figure out all of the things that they have been doing and how they can continue to work with the kids this school year, and how that can carry over into the other school sites. So that's all in process. And then just so school age care will be operating out of Willow over the summer, so that'll allow the other buildings to start all of their movement and all that needs to be done. Because, I mean, we're a large group. We take up a big portion of a building, so this will be actually very nice for us this summer that we can keep school age care at that site, and then allow the space needed for all of the other things that need to take place over summer. So it's not like on June 30th everything closes down.
I mean, financially, I'm not sure what the best option here is, and I'm trying to be real sensitive about this. It wasn't my understanding until just hearing you guys talk that selling is apparently the only option that this board is willing to entertain. And I'm just curious if there's been any community suggestions that we would want to consider as a board that maybe have been thrown out there, or maybe we just haven't opened up the opportunity to hear from our community on even what they would like to see. I would like to suggest putting a survey or some sort of options out there where people could just simply make some suggestions so we have something else to consider other than selling. Not that that won't be the outcome, but just to have that piece in place.
Kate?
The wording there bothers me a little bit because it says the board is not willing to consider that. And I can see where your question is. I think the reframe might be, would the board be willing to consider that? And perhaps provide an idea for what that looks like.
Yes, I just wasn't under the understanding that that's what we were discussing is only selling.
That's why we're discussing.
Yeah, right, which is why I'm bringing it up.
I think a frame of a question would be better than a we're not willing to.
Okay, so would anyone else on the board be willing to entertain that?
Megan?
Can I ask you a question? So when you mean what the community would want to do with it, in your mind, does that mean the school district still owns the building and it's renting the space out? I guess I'm not really sure
Possibly.
what you're thinking.
I don't know, I'm just I just want to make sure that we're exploring the options, that's really it. That's why I started off saying financially, I get that selling it might be the best option. I'm not arguing that. I'm not debating that. I'm just leaving a little space there. If there's maybe a really cool opportunity, I get that they're not schools, past this year. I'm not trying to push anything like that. But I'm just wondering if there's a really neat opportunity that's maybe right here. Maybe our administration has some suggestions. Maybe there's a group of teachers that has suggestions, or just somebody in the community that would have something that we could utilize one of those spaces potentially for. Just an opportunity to leave space for it. That's all I was asking.
I think, I've talked about this a little bit, kind of just because this happened to my, high school where I grew up, was converted to apartments, and I know of other schools that were converted to community space, library, a senior center, things like that. That's kind of up to the municipality. I think there was talk about when the library was looking at their space when the police were going to move out, that they were kind of like, do we even want to be here? Should we be looking for something else? And I think they were, at least kind of just thinking about maybe what would happen with that. It's kind of up to the municipality to drive that too. I mean, any entity would have the opportunity to bid on the buildings if we put them up for sale or list them. So I'm not opposed to, I don't know, school districts usually aren't landlords. So, but, I'm not saying there haven't been, a communal or a combination use of space. So I don't, I'm not opposed to if somebody wants to come forward with, but again, it has to make sense for us of the value of the building and to the responsibility to the taxpayer.
I fully agree with that. Fully agree with that. Just wanted to, just looking can we just open that space to see if anything really neat comes forward before we, and keep working towards getting bids and, all that kind of stuff worked out over here if that's what the ultimate decision is, but I think it would be nice to just leave that space there.
Yeah, I don't know that anybody was expecting we'd be having, a lot of people saying an unsolicited offer, I was, schools, as, sometimes they sit, right? Sometimes they can't be, if there's not a use, or, so, but anyway, yeah. Okay,
Is there a way online, Tracy, that people could maybe bring forth ideas that they might have?
We certainly could set that up as a Google form and people could submit their ideas. I mean, that's easy enough to do.
And maybe we could have a deadline that would coincide with you finding those answers out, Nick, so that we could talk about it together.
Yep.
One,
Mr. President, oh, you go ahead, sorry, Maria.
as I'm listening to the conversation, I guess, as I reflect on the decision to close the schools was one of saying we are no longer operating these buildings. We're putting forth, I think, a little unexpected because of this prompt and offer to say we're opening this process up to accept bids. I think I'm a little concerned about putting a survey online that then, I think the wording has to be really careful. On how that's bid. I would be concerned somebody would think we're open to holding these buildings and maintaining them for another use. And that's not my lens in this conversation. I don't know, I guess my question would be for the others.
I'm sorry, you didn't say, the form is not for soliciting bids.
Correct. I'm not,
Okay.
no. I'm just,
Yes.
I'm concerned about the idea of people thinking now this is idea generation and the school district is open to keeping these buildings and using them in another way, and we're going to create idea generation.
I think,
the thing with that is, honestly, is that the reason these buildings are being closed.
Yes.
Is because of the expense of keeping
Exactly.
them and the future maintenance. So we can't set ourselves up where we're using, again, more taxpayer money.
That's exactly what I'm saying,
Okay.
Bob. Yes,
Yep.
you and I are in alignment there. I want to confirm. So I guess I'm struggling with the idea of a survey and setting up misexpectations of what that is and what the Google form is and what we're opening up. I wonder, we're having this conversation right now in a public space, making it known we're moving towards the idea of posting these up for sale. That's a signal to the community, come with your ideas. If you have a bid and you want to purchase that for some creative thing, you could make a bid. I think it would be worth maybe an outreach to the city of Hudson or town of St. Joe to give them a heads up and say, if you have an idea, or just so you know, this is where we're moving. And if there was something you were interested in purchasing those buildings for, that's a viable option as well. Those feel like we're opening that door in that regard. That's just my lens.
So 3 people have had their fans on the button. Who wants to go first? Aaron?
And I'm okay with that. Part of that discussion was the sell potential of, what these would be used for, who would be buying these buildings. And so I don't mind that approach to it. And I agree, we do need to be careful because it's not like idea land, like, hey, let's build a gymnasium in here. We already have a gymnasium. I mean, I can understand that. I just want to make sure that we're opening that space
Okay.
somehow.
Megan?
I was just gonna say, from what I've seen or read about in other communities that have repurposed schools, it's generally been another entity, like governmental entity, that has purchased it. Like maybe the county purchases it and makes it into a senior center. So if we're gonna do outreach, I'd add the county to the list just to let them know. So I see what you're saying, because generally, like, the school district wouldn't run a senior center, but I'm not just thinking the highest bidder is the most important thing inherently in this. Of course, we want to get what we can for taxpayers, but it's important what it would add to a community and be as a neighbor for people as well.
Exactly. Thank you for saying that.
Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to echo the mostly Maria's comments that I'm really hesitant to misaligning expectations out there with a survey that, you know, we're looking for ideas, send us your ideas. You know, we went through a process 4 months ago to make the hard decision to close these buildings, acknowledging that we're shrinking as a district and bringing on, being a landlord, this, you know, doing those things it can't be what we're doing. We have to focus on an excellent educational experience for our students. So I would be hesitant to kind of an open-ended, what do you think we should do with them? To me, it's no longer owning the buildings. I want to make sure that we solicit bids, that folks know it's out there, that there are creative ideas. You know, the dream scenario is the city of Hudson wants to buy it for a good market value and turn it into a community center or something, right? I don't know if that's possible, but we can't run a community center or continue to hold on to that, to the liability of those two buildings. Yep.
Okay. Anyone else?
I don't really have any direction right now.
You couldn't,
So are we to hold off on any type of community feedback form on the website? Are we not to hold off? Right now, the direction that I have, that I feel really confident on, is to talk with our attorney about the different paths forward and also get some background on if we're gonna list the buildings, you know, with the broker. But I don't, as far as this, and then I also have reaching out to the city of Hudson, town of St. Joe, and the St. Croix County, just to let them know we're gonna have these two buildings. Do they have any desire to own them?
To
I'm good
Nick's,
with
just
that.
to build on Nick's questions, I mean, what do you want on the website to kind of, what you're saying, what Maria is saying, what Brian, what several of you have said now? Is there something that you do want on the website to say that this is something we are doing as a district? And if people are interested in doing something, this is where they need to go?
My suggestion is nothing goes on the website right now. We've had a discussion in open session. It is live streamed. People are aware we're moving forward. And if and when we need to put something on the website formally, we would do that at a later date. But I'm not
so
suggesting a survey at
revisit
all.
this maybe after we get information and
Yeah.
report back from Nick.
Yeah, and Nick, I was gonna add to the list you laid out, I wonder if it makes sense when you're talking to potential brokers for ideas on, you know, connecting with, I don't know, the term non-traditional buyers, to make sure that there's, you know, community organizations know that these opportunities are there. I'm sure with their vast experience, they've dealt with similar situations.
Okay. Okay. Is that enough?
I think so.
Okay. Moving on to, with disposition, you know, we did receive a letter from the town of St. Joe. And one of their asks was, we have the historical bell there, and they would hope that they would retain the bell. I don't think, I can open it up, but I don't think anybody would have a problem with saying that bell was property of that school before it was part of the Hudson District. If anyone have any issue with donating that bell to the town of St. Joe?
None. None. I think it's appropriate, actually.
Okay, I just think we should probably, you know, we can craft a email or a letter to Teresa. Because I have heard a couple of people ask about that. So. And that's, again, if the sale goes through and all that kind of stuff. Then moving on to elementary boundaries.
You got the,
What? Oh, convention, oh, that's right, sorry, and that's what I was in. So we had the state, the Association of School Board Conventions down in Milwaukee, it's yearly. There was a good turnout this year, that has people from all 420 21 districts or whatever in the state. There is a, sessions to attend for board members or administration. We had a good number of board members down there and some administration as well. And one of the things that I wanted to bring up is they have a legislative assembly where I serve on the Policy and Resolutions Committee for WASB, and that is different school districts bring back policy resolutions, which they talk about, we vote on, that moves forward to the General Assembly, where you have a room full of 400 and some people voting on them, making amendments, deciding which to push through, and become part of their lobbying effort, which they then go to Madison and really push hard for. And Brian was first legislative assembly as a what do you call it?
Assembly person?
Delegate.
A delegate, yes. I was one so long ago, I choose not to remember what it's called. Yes, yeah. But this was a really interesting one, and Brian may say it wasn't that interesting, but I did attend as well, even though I wasn't a delegate, because I was part of the committee, and there was an emergency resolution. And everybody's like, what's that? It doesn't happen often. But one committee member from a very small school district, Wisconsin Heights, over by Blue Earth or Black Earth, Wisconsin, on the east side, rural, 219 kids in their high school. He was very adamant that because of the special ed funding boost we were supposed to get this year, going 42 for the first year and 45% for the second year, we all made our budgetary decisions. We were looking at that. After that, the legislature pulled that back and said, nope, you're getting 35%. So he made an emergency resolution, which we voted on and approved, and it went to the assembly and got accepted by a wide margin, and that was to have all 400 districts, have a bigger voice, showing our displeasure with, how that happened, the fact that it happened after our resolution opportunities were granted late in the year, kind of throws our budgeting off, and many districts, have to realign, as a result. And just to have a bigger unified voice in Madison that this was not okay, and we need to push to have them fulfill their obligation that they approved. And so I'll ask Brian, put him on the spot, because he was there for that.
It was a great experience, Mr. President, and I look forward to Maria or Aaron next year having their first opportunity to be a delegate. But yeah, the guy from Wisconsin Heights, not only is it a small district, he's a small person, and he was visibly excited when I was sitting behind him, and he was like, when you saw the vote go up on the screen, it passed 90% of the district voted yes. One reflection I had on that experience, and maybe we can think about this next year when we have our 2 to 3 hour discussion of our thought of the proposals.
Nick will call the question.
But in all seriousness, I think that body, WASB needs more focus when they're going to the legislature. The funding problem is significant, and, the special ed going from 42% to 35%, due to bad estimates or whatever the reason is, not having enough money, is a problem for school districts. We're bringing in, what's the difference, Nick? Do you know off the top of your head? Is it $1 million-ish?
Yeah, we could, with the change in the last 3 months, we could be looking at another $1 million difference, $800 to $1 million deficit. So.
Yeah, we're trying to make plans and, deliver excellent educational experiences, and it's hard to do that when, the state's supposed to be our rock with this stuff. And so just, reflecting on that, there's things like school meals and, I don't know, some of the other technical proposals, they sound great, but pushing that organization to really zero in on fixing the funding formula, bringing funding up to districts, which has the result of possibly reducing property taxes for our property taxpayers, really needs to be the focus of that organization.
I wanted to bring it up too, because, we've been asked by our community, what have you guys done down in Madison to get these changes to fix the funding formula? And, you know, besides the legislative session down in Madison that some of the board members went to, which happens every 2 years, so not this year, but next year will be another opportunity. So when you hear like, well, they were at a convention, what does that mean? Well, I mean, it's camaraderie with it's learning from other board members, from other districts. It's the sessions, a lot of them are really good. I love the AI ones I went to. I, like Heather Loughlin used to go to, I try and avoid the finance ones because, yeah. But that, I will just say that that's an example of us trying to have a voice and us trying to have, to, you know, give Hudson a voice down in Madison, so.
Mr. President?
Yes, Megan.
I was just wondering, I could draft a letter to our legislators for us to
I
look
expect
at,
you
as
will.
I've done in the past. Okay, I'll put it on my list.
Mr.
Maria?
President, I just was curious, when you say have more of a unified voice, can you share a little bit, what does that mean? What does that translate into action-wise from WASB on this?
I have no idea.
No idea.
No, they get, you know, we've got, how many resolutions did we have? And every year they have a bunch of resolutions, and it doesn't mean that it becomes law. It doesn't mean, so like he said, we need to focus. I'd go for less resolutions and more focused resolutions. So, this means that they put lobbying muscle, and the fact that it was like a 90 whatever percent, that's, and there were people that argued that, what does this get us in the end? You know, I think it spoke very strongly. But it really directs where they put their lobbying efforts, you know, as a body. And I'm, you know, I mean, you could argue about the success of that over the years, right? There's a bunch of resolutions that passed that are sitting there and aren't being acted on and aren't being pushed. Maybe they come back, you know, so.
Mr. President, I wonder, Megan, in thinking of all the beautiful letters that you've written, I wonder if we have a letter to WASB from us making that request and saying, reflection, you had 90%, this is your focus this year. Please, like emphasizing there's nothing else should be on the table other than a conversation around 1 or 2 policies on funding, particularly the special education. And I don't know if that would have power, but it feels like WASB needs a little bit more direct feedback. We are a member we pay membership dues, and I think it's important they hear from us that having policy initiative after policy initiative that goes nowhere or is just non-starters from the beginning, we need to start honing that down.
Well, and certainly let, you know, our senator and our assemblyman, you know, Staff Schultz and Shannon, be aware of what we experienced, and that can be part of that letter going out too, so. Anybody else? Okay. Oh, one more thing. Green Bay, I did a seminar about Green Bay area public schools. They have it on their tax bill, the how much money goes for vouchers. And they were one of the, you know, there's like, I think about 13 communities in Wisconsin. Some areas it has to be a county thing. I've talked to Bonnie about that, and there's a group that they advocate for, and you can go on their site and you can put your school district in, and it'll show you exactly how much money, you know, they goes to voucher schools. If you look at Hudson, it says 0, and you're like, well, we know if we're spending money, you know, that, but we don't have voucher schools in our community. That's why it says 0. But off the top of the money that goes to Madison, I know, I mean, the last time it was like 1.2, 1.3, something like $1 million that we, costs us money to go to a voucher program that we don't have any back from that. So I don't know, like I've contacted the group, like, how do we get that number on our taxes, or how we can report it? They make it very hard for us to see what that is. So we've talked about it before, but I just thought I'd bring that up too. It is movement in the state. So. Okay. If no other questions, let's see. Boundary scenarios. You want to go to, what do you want to do?
Elementary boundary meetings?
Yeah. Start with
So
that.
we have the second of 2 elementary boundary meetings coming up tomorrow. The first meeting, what you have on here is is the feedback from the first meeting. So there was about 40 people that showed up to the meeting at the middle school 2 weeks ago, Tuesday. And MGT gave a presentation. They kind of did an extended presentation of kind of how we got to where we are, and then went through the different options and projections as they kind of went through everything. What you have and what Tim has linked here is the feedback document. So the first, I think, 7 pages are it's an AI analysis of all the open-ended comments and questions all the way through. This was put together by MGT. This was not put together by me or anybody in the district team. And then, I sent this to the board last week, so you guys had it, so you could review it. And then it gets into the actual meeting results. Excuse me. So there were 2 ways people could give feedback. I think it starts about page 8 of 33. And there was about 28 people that gave feedback actively during the meeting using the Poll Anywhere software. And you can kind of see how those different components came out. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time dissecting this data right now because MGT, that's a big part of the presentation tomorrow, is going through the feedback, which I know the board will be there for that. And you guys can read through it. But about 28 people gave feedback during the meeting. I think a lot of people said, hey, I want to be able to dissect this information, digest this information a little bit better. And so when we had the online polling, which was through Qualtrics, I think Tracy got that up on our website, and we did remind people that they could go and they could add their comments and give their feedback. With that, we had almost 300 people provide feedback on that one for us. So much greater feedback on that. You can start to see, the vast majority of the people providing feedback were parents of students, which you would expect. It starts on page 22 of 33. And you can start to see, kind of how it broke down, if there were employees. And like I said, I'm not going to go through everything on here. The questions were the same as what was done during the live meeting, but an opportunity for people to provide feedback. The boundary consultants did provide three different sets of boundaries as they work through it. And, you can go on our website right now and you can actively look at those 3 boundaries and you can put in your address and it'll show which elementary school you'd be at based on your house address. You can zoom in. Because some of the pictures, when you try to put it on a computer, they, without the ability to zoom in, it's kind of hard to see where the boundaries totally lie as you work through there. But the big questions they ask were, what do you see as the best new boundary option? And then also, which scenario should be eliminated? So kind of the best, and what do you think is the worst? It was interesting that pretty even on best new options for the most part. They said blue and purple, with green kind of being in the middle. And then for what people thought were the worst options, again, was blue and purple, with green being in the middle. So one of the things that MGT has done is they took all the feedback from the comments, and they said, hey, what we really saw was, people were they had strong feelings about blue and purple, whether it be positive or negative, but green was just kind of a middle-of-the-road option. And so they have created a 4th option that they'll be sharing tomorrow night with the community. If you go to the next document, Tim, called Boundary Scenarios and Class Sizes, I have the 4th option. They gave me the numbers on the 4th option so I could load it in. And what we did is what I did for the board is I'm giving you 2 different looks at it. So if we start with the second page, this is the document that people saw without the orange scenario, where there were some class sizes over class size guidelines. Essentially, in any of the 3 options, there were 2 grades total between all of the buildings in these options where they'd be slightly over class size guidelines. So just to give you some perspective, what I said this was a limited number of sections on this. So this would be how we typically would staff sections, based on enrollment and things like that. Currently, I believe, and Andrea, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we have 3 classes or grades over the class size guidelines as we currently are sitting. Is that,
Yeah, I believe so. I'll pull it up quick.
so,
Right now, this year.
right now, this year as we sit. And so this scenario is if we were to kind of staff it based on, what we've done in the past, these would be pretty similar ways that we would staff these different scenarios. If you go up, what I did was go ahead and add additional sections to make sure that every class was under the class size guidelines. And could we staff it? When we originally told you budget projections, we thought we'd staff around 86 sections. So you can see it ranges anywhere from 86 to 88 sections as we go through this based on how these things are staffed. And again, these are linked to the agenda. But the orange scenario, a couple things I want to point out is on some of these different things. So pretty consistently across the board, North Hudson has a big second grade class, which would require us either to add a section or to leave it be about 1 over class size guidelines. Second grade tends to be a grade that we tend to let get a little bit above class size guidelines in the past, because when they go to third grade, the class size guidelines go up. And so it really is kind of a one-year issue. The other area in orange is that it would be high if we did not add a section would be 5th grade at Hudson Prairie. So orange, in this scenario, you can see we added a 5th section. So people say, oh, I thought Hudson Prairie is a 4-section building. It is a 4-section building, but if we had to add a 5th section, one of the things that we would have to do with Hudson Prairie is we then wouldn't have 4K at Hudson Prairie. We would add another section of 4K to one of the other elementaries that had open sections as we did it. If we wanted to add an additional section, a 5th section, so instead of being 28 in a class, it drops it to more like 22.8. That's what the orange scenario as you go through that. The other thing to keep in mind.
Can I ask a question quick?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you on that. And so that would only be a kind of a 1-year issue is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's this coming 5th graders, so then the following year, we could potentially have 4K there if that was the case?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And so, I think one of the things to consider is we are currently at our high water mark, according to MGT's projections. I mean, this year, we actually have more kids than they're projecting we're going to have next year. And next year will be our highest number of kids in the 10-year projection related to having 4 elementaries. And so we still do have additional, even with adding the extra sections to get all of the class sizes underneath the class size guidelines, we still have enough classrooms in the district. These classroom sections do not take into account 4K classrooms. Now, at Hudson Prairie, we would take one because we need that 5th section. That building's a 4-section building. But we have 4K classrooms in addition to the empty classrooms that are on this sheet. So they'll be talking through that a little bit tomorrow night, but just wanted to kind of go through and let the board know there's 2 different ways you can do this. You can add those 2 sections. You may, you can say, no, we're not going to add those sections. 86 is what we built our number around. Our budgeting numbers, it could be that, okay, we have to go to 87 sections instead of 86, so that means we don't save as much. It might be $100,000 less in savings than what we projected. So maybe instead of 3.3, you're talking about 3.2, or vice versa. Or you might be the next year, we actually drop, or you decide to go with the purple plan, which, is right on. Or if you go with the more restricted number of sections, they're all at or below what we've budgeted. And so I think it's just important to know that we're also really early in the game as far as number of sections and things like that. We start doing usually was it about March or April, Andrea? We start giving you guys how many sections we think we have allocated moving into next year with buildings, and how many sections we think we're going to need. And you get that basically about every meeting for about 4 months, 5 months, and it goes up and down, as we kind of work through it. So in all of the scenarios, we're well within our capacity to be able to handle all of the kids. We can absolutely handle it underneath the current class size guidelines. Even if we were to add those 2 additional sections, what questions do you have?
Nick, on the, you mentioned under the gold scenario, under the additional sections, just one building Prairie would not have a 4K.
Correct.
Under any of the other scenarios, does that issue exist? So
In the blue scenario, North Hudson would be able to have 4K, but wouldn't be able to have 4K wrap care. Because it'd be 19 sections under the blue scenario. Which is the building's built for 18 plus 2 additional classrooms for 4K. So, otherwise, and we still have additional classrooms. So even under the blue scenario, there's 2 additional empty classrooms across the district that could handle that. And under the orange scenario, there's 3 additional classrooms that would be empty across the district, even with adding those additional sections. We would anticipate, the elementary numbers are going to fall because as we continue to graduate larger 5th grade classes and bring in smaller kindergarten classes, we're going to free up more sections as we continue to move forward.
Nick, remind me, how many 4K do we have this year? I think it's like 280, 270?
4K?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Current 4K students, we have 306 total 4K.
306, great, thank you.
Yep, of which,
And how many of the schools have 4K? This
3
year?
buildings have.
3 buildings
Three
have
buil-
4K.
So 3 buildings now have 4K.
Yes.
Yep.
But Willow has 2
2 sections.
2 sections.
sections.
Yeah.
So we're up.
We're operating 4 sections of 4K.
Okay.
And so, because we use community partners, and I think the other thing that's important to note, and Sue would tell you this because she's been running our 4K program essentially since it started, we haven't had 4K in the same buildings 2 consecutive years, I don't think, since we started 8 or 9 years ago. I mean, we've moved it around based on where we have space. So I know if we have space in each of the elementaries, that's been kind of a goal to make sure we have it in each elementary if we can, but it's also not been something we've ever done.
Well, and that's something we've heard is that, well, you're not going to have it in every school. Well, we didn't usually have it in every school.
Correct.
So,
Mr. President? So we'll be able to have at least the same number of sections of 4K as we
Oh, absolutely.
currently have under any scenario here.
As far as being able to fit it, yes, but now
Yes.
we may not need as many sections depending on students.
Yes, and so let's say North Hudson, you decide to do 4K there, but we don't have room for wrap care. Would those kids get bused somewhere? I mean,
Could
there'd be
potentially.
something figured out.
Yep. Yep, we
Okay.
could absolutely look at that.
yeah, what are the serious drawbacks for having 4K but not wrap care in a building? I mean,
Well, you gotta understand, we didn't offer wrap care until what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Tracy?
So what we noticed is we pick up more kids who will attend our in-house 4K if we have wrap care.
Yeah, because most parents need the full day care. Yeah, so, and if there's not the wrap care, they tend to then stay with the private partners, which is still our 4K programming during the 2.5 hours a day that they're getting 4K. So,
One more question.
yep,
And so tomorrow they'll show us the map for the orange, and that'll be added to the tool online
Yep.
as well? All right,
Yep.
awesome.
Nick, quick question. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm reading this correctly. So out of this, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, out of reading through all this survey scenario of the people that took the survey, green is the one that is favored the most? Is that,
what they,
why am I not
what they
reading?
said
Brian
about it,
Said no.
yeah, what they said about it, it had the least strong feelings.
Okay.
So the least overly, hey, this is the best,
So
and also
purple is
least
the
of.
best one. Is that what I mean, according to these?
Purple's slightly favored.
Yeah, purple is slightly favored over blue. And what they tried to do when they created the orange scenarios, they tried to look at, I think the orange scenario, from what they've told me is, for example, Red Cedar Canyon, in some of these scenarios was to go back down towards Rivercrest. And in the orange scenario, they keep it with EP Rock. In the orange scenario, kind of everything south of 94 out east, kind of out by where Maria's at, that goes down to Rivercrest. Instead of N being the dividing line, it goes up to 94. And then, one of the things we heard from feedback on purple, though, was that it breaks Willow into 3 different elementary boundaries, and that wasn't overly positive. So right now, I think it's green, blue, and orange breaks Willow into 2, and it breaks Holton into 2, but purple breaks it into 3 as you go through it. Which the concern was just we want to make sure we have the least amount of transition for kids, and we want them to obviously have people they know as they change buildings and as we work through that. I think in MGT's original presentation, when you look at total number of students impacted based on the different scenarios, if you look at the purple option, it actually moves the fewest students. It primarily moves Hudson, when I say the fewest students, both the fewest students and the fewest non-closing building students. So the only students moving in the purple scenario would be Hudson Prairie students that aren't already having to move because the building's being closed, Willow and Holton. So there's, between Willow and Holton, there's, I think somewhere in the neighborhoods, it's like 431 students that are displaced. And so in the purple scenario, 538 total students. So there's about 107 students that aren't currently going to Willow or Holton that would have to change boundaries. But like the green option isn't much different. It's only 17 students more than that. And the difference is, instead of 107 students coming from Prairie getting moved, there's students from Prairie moving, North Hudson moving, and EP Rock moving. Under none of the scenarios do students from Rivercrest move. And it's just, we're pushing more kids into their boundary, not needing to move them out. So.
I'm still a little confused after, I'm reading through all this stuff and it says like here on page, what page is this? 13, after seeing the proposed scenarios, which scenarios should be eliminated from the new boundary considerations, you may choose to not respond. There's 16 responses, and it's showing the highest percentage was the purple to be eliminated. Is that, am I not reading this correctly?
What page are you on?
That's from the
13?
evening, the data set that you're looking at right now, Erin, is from the evening responses, the responses they received live from the people that were at last week's session. And then if you go lower down, the one where purple and blue are kind of almost equally liked and equally disliked, that's from the online survey where there are 238 people who responded. So they're kind of, it's one long document that brings 2 data sets together in 2 different presentations. I totally get, it's confusing. It takes a minute to wrap your head around, but those first initial pages just are from people who attended in person.
That's actually what I was asking.
Okay, great.
So of the people who were there at the meeting, they were favoring the green and they wanted the purple to go. And then the other people that were not there weighed in, and then purple is now looking like the better option.
Well, they could be the same people. So you could have the 24 people that weighed in at the meeting could have also weighed in online. Because it is
Okay.
anonymous.
Okay. Brian asked a question a little bit ago about the blue option with 4K, and we can do 4K there, but there's no wrap care. Is there any other building? I didn't hear you mention that. That we would have that
At
same
North Hudson.
scenario.
You didn't say North Hudson. It's just North Hudson. that
Yep,
would
so
not have-
it's
yeah.
only North Hudson. There's no other school that would not be able to do 4K wrap care
In which scenario?
in the blue option.
So in the so in the blue option, no, North Hudson can do wrap care. It is the orange option that North Hudson cannot do wrap care.
I think we should label these option 1, 2, 3, 4 personally. The colors are hard to keep track of.
What's that?
I wrote down blue also.
Oh,
North Hudson 4K, but no 4K wrap.
And it is blue. Blue has the 1-4 section, North Hudson.
oh, I'm sorry.
which is-
I'm looking at the bottom one. Sorry.
I feel
Yes.
better now that you're getting a
Yes,
little
blue,
confused.
yes, blue has 19 sections. I'm sorry. I was in the wrong document. So, yes, if you were to add the additional sections to get all the class sizes underneath class size guidelines, then yes, it was only North Hudson, would not be able to offer the wrap care. The orange, Hudson Prairie wouldn't offer 4K.
Okay, so all options, red, blue, green, yellow, orange, brown.
Just orange, blue, purple, and
The 4 options, I'm just being funny. Out of those, there's no other hiccups with 4K or wrap care in any of those options, just these 2, the orange for no 4K at all at Hudson Prairie, and the blue option, if it is still blue option, right? Okay, blue option,
orange and blue have some challenges
orange or
with
blue both
4K,
have
with 4K.
challenges. Okay,
But not challenges for K through 5.
correct, okay,
And
thank you.
to be clear, it's hiccups with having 4K and wrap care in each building, not hiccups with us having
4K
the
and
space
wrap
for 4K in general.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think another important point with that is that's likely just next year.
Yes.
You know, this year, we don't have 4K in all of our buildings, and we're talking about maybe one of these scenarios not having 4K at one of the buildings.
For 1 year.
But our projections show our kids shrinking, our student count shrinking. Sorry, that came out weird. One question I had, Nick, in looking at all the scenarios, and you can pass if you don't have an answer for now, but I think it'd be worth asking MGT. Prairie looks the most full. And, one concern I would have is that feels like the most risk of needing to reboundary again sooner than we want to. So I think it'd be good to talk to MGT about kind of their thoughts on the risk of the Prairie area growing more than is in there. Why are they comfortable with Prairie being at the counts it's at? Because I think it's what 588 is capacity under our guidelines, and
It's spelled out in slide 44 of their presentation.
oh, I haven't gotten to slide 40.
So, of their presentation that they gave last
Oh.
Tuesday, that they gave last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday, yes.
So basically what happens is, again, the high water mark for Prairie is going to be next year, and then it's going to continue to drop. So Prairie is scheduled to drop almost 40 students when that 5th grade class goes through, because they're going to be bringing in a kindergarten class of 75 and a 5th grade class of 114 is leaving. So when you look at Prairie's numbers, yes, they're at 90% capacity in 2 out of the 3 scenarios, 88 in the other. But within 5 years, they're down to 80% capacity. And you look at 10 years, they're running anywhere from 76 to 80% capacity. So based on their numbers, they feel that, that's why Prairie can start a little high, but within 1 year, it's going to drop quite a bit. And then the same thing, like Rivercrest is starting the lowest at 73, but finishes up over 10 years at about 80% capacity. So they purposely set up the scenario so that they can handle, over the next 10 years, the ups and the downs.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yep. So there'll be a lot more discussion. So tomorrow night, like I said, the order of events for tomorrow night is, I think Lance will spend kind of a recap, Reader's Digest version of kind of where we've been, not the 45 minutes he spent last time on kind of some of the data pieces. Then he's going to go in and do more of a review of all of the feedback from the boundary scenarios that they've received, both through the poll anywhere and the Qualtrics. Then he's going to talk about, what things they could try to accomplish through the feedback in the orange option, what things they couldn't, and present the additional option, the orange option, as they move through with the boundaries and things like that, and then get some additional feedback. It'll go back out to survey again on our website, and we'll have that out, and then they'll make some final tweaks prior to presenting to the board on the 9th. Questions? All right, that's all I got.
Oh, just an appreciation that they were able to look at the feedback and identify some tangible ways that they could tweak and respond to at least some of the feedback. I appreciate that. That's helpful to be able to see and be able to reflect on that tomorrow.
Okay. Good presentations tonight and good information. If there's no other questions, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Megan,
Second.
Second from Brian. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.